On Press Perspective today, we touch upon the growing popularity of Korean food overseas and the impact of economic barriers on falling birth rates. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday. Now today, that is July 11th, is World Population Day, an annual occasion to raise awareness about universal population matters. We touch upon some of those issues in our panel session today, but first we talk about the growing presence of Korean food overseas. For more on this, I have Celio Fioretti with French daily Croix here in the studio. Celio, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on today's topics. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Great to be in an air-conditioned studio today.
Right, for sure. Celio, we will start with you. So American media claim that Korean food seems to be everywhere in the US. Would you say this is also the trend over in Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. Korean food is gaining ground in Europe as well, although perhaps not maybe at the same speed as the US. We're still a little bit backward on that. But what we're seeing is a sort of ripple effect from the growing interest abroad about Korean culture, to the Korean wave, the Hallyu. It could be Korean drama, Korean cinema, Korean movies, music, and food we see now. And in the US, for example, Korean cuisine has exploded from fine dining, winning awards, to just a regular restaurant or snacks on the streets. Especially we can see on social media, and I think social media plays a big role into exporting Korean culture. You can see on TikTok people showing the new discoveries or the best restaurant they know. And recently I saw some TikToks for the corn dogs, very famous here in even the baseball stadium or everywhere in the street, and now it's getting popular also abroad. And in France, for example, in Paris, the numbers of Korean restaurants maybe have tripled over like the last 5 years. So you have a lot more restaurants. Still, I have to say the menu last time I checked were not as representative of all the Korean cuisine. I think it's because the ingredients are hard to find abroad. So it's mostly bibimbap and barbecue, which is good enough to take a first grasp of the Korean cuisine. Noting also there's more Korean mart, so people can also try to make their own food at home. You can buy tteokbokki, you can buy all the Korean ingredients as best as you can. So yeah, in cities in Europe like Paris, Berlin, London, there's growing demand for Korean cuisine, growing numbers of restaurants. We still haven't catch the pace of the US. We haven't seen the frozen gimbap that made a lot of headlines last year. But yeah, I would say it's becoming part of the mainstream culinary world.
Right. Now, Colin, and feel free to correct me if I get my facts wrong, but as recently as about a decade ago, Korean cuisine was considered maybe an acquired taste, but it seems like in recent years, the global palate for Korean food has been growing. How do you explain this shift, if you will?
Broadly speaking, that's the shift that's happened, certainly. And about 10 years ago is when I moved here to Korea. I was living in the US before this, in Koreatown, in Los Angeles, in fact. So in Los Angeles, because of Koreatown and the large number of Koreans, there was a relatively high awareness of Korean food. It was the cool thing, one of the cool things to eat, if you were in the know. And there was a food critic, Jonathan Gold, who was very well respected at that time. He died a few years ago, who was always talking up Korean food. So if you were into food in Los Angeles, you read Jonathan Gold, and he was always on about Korean food. So you'd be tapped in if you were culinarily aware there. Now, if you got the farther you got out of Koreatown, the less awareness there was. And yes, you're right, Korean food was still something people often hadn't tried, or they didn't know what to imagine. They knew what Korea was, but if they heard Korean food, they wouldn't quite know, the image of a certain dish wouldn't come to mind. Like, there was no taco, there was no sushi, there was no clearly distinct reference point visually. But Korean barbecue became more popular, and then they'd see sort of, if you watched Korean dramas, you'd see other dishes, you'd want to try them. And I think by now, I wouldn't say most Americans have tried Korean food, but they know it's something that can be had. When I was living in the US, even outside of Koreatown, in places where there were Koreans, you could find Korean restaurants, and reliably they'd be good, because the clientele was almost entirely Korean at that time. So it was safe. If you liked Korean food, any Korean restaurant, with some exceptions, was going to be pretty good. Now we can contrast that to a cuisine like Thai food. And there's actually been a program called I think it's called the Global Thai Program, started in about 2002, where the Thai government, the government of Thailand, funded or provided incentives for Thais to start Thai restaurants abroad. So there's been a huge proliferation. There were quite a few before then in the US, but after that it's become one of the most popular genres of foreign food in America. It's something everybody practically eats, Thai food. And commensurately, the average Thai restaurant is, I don't think I'm shocking anybody by saying, not very good in the United States. So there is a sense in which you can go too far. You can really push a cuisine out into the world, and it just becomes, I don't know if watered down is the right word, but the average Thai meal in the US is bland. Not a lot of reflections of regional flavors of the regions of Thailand. Just it's all the same stuff, and focused around certain dishes that were kind of invented recently in Thailand, sometimes to make rice go farther, like the pad thai, the noodles. That was a push by the government to make rice sort of go farther, to not deplete the rice stocks so much. So there are good Thai restaurants in the US, but when you really are trying to promote a cuisine abroad, there are risks that come with it. And that aside, I think the adoption of Korean cuisine into the daily sort of culinary interests of Americans has to do with the flavors. Some say that Korean food can be too spicy for foreigners. Sometimes that's true, sometimes not. But also it's a culture of how you eat. And as I've lived here, as I say, for a decade in Korea, I already liked sort of sharing dishes with people. But now it's become, oh, this is the way you should eat. This is the way to eat. You order a bunch of things, or you make a bunch of dishes, you put them in the middle, and you all share them. Like, that's natural to me, and I think it's becoming more natural to more and more Americans or other Westerners. And in fact, I had a French meal the other day here in Korea where everybody was Korean but me, and sure enough, we ordered a bunch of things, and just, we had our boeuf bourguignon, we had, even risotto came out as well, but it was all in the center, we were all sharing, it was all good.
Right, sharing is caring.
Indeed, so they say.
All right, well, let's move now from food to fertility. Celio, the UN Population Fund says that social and economic barriers, not choice, are behind the fertility crisis worldwide. First of all, Celio, could you start off by telling us a bit about the agency's findings? And secondly, to what extent do you agree with the findings, keeping in mind, of course, the situation here in South Korea?
Yeah, of course, the UN Population Fund's latest report reframes what we often call a fertility crisis, saying the real crisis isn't the low birth rate, but the fact that millions of people are unable to make the choice to have kids because of limitation, constraints, especially on infrastructure. Drawing from a global survey across 14 countries, the UN finds that financial pressures are the #1 barrier to parenthood, with nearly 40% of respondents saying that they cannot afford to have one baby. And concern about job security, climate change, and gender inequality also ranks high. Now, if we take a look at South Korea itself, this diagnosis is very close to the situation here. The country has the world's lowest fertility rate, but the surveys here constantly show that among many young Koreans, they want children, but they just feel they cannot afford it, or they don't have the opportunity to get one. I think the housing crisis really blocks sort of young couples to get a bigger apartment with a spare room so they can have kids. That's a big problem for young couples. And also, I would say the infrastructures that go around parenthood. It could be a daycare, nurseries, which are existent but in so few numbers that it's really hard when you have a job, when both parents are working. Nobody can really take the time off to take care of a kid at home because it takes a lot of time. So all these small infrastructures that are very needed are lacking right now in Korea, and that makes an infrastructure issue blocking parents that would want to get a kid, but they just simply cannot. So I would say, yes, I quite agree with the UN report on that. It's not a lack of will, it's really a lack of structure that would accompany the parents. And the last years, government has been implementing a lot of money, and money sure helps, especially with a housing crisis, but it's not the only answer, and maybe some more structural change should be done in order to allow parents to have kids.
Right. Colin, this particular report also shows that 4 out of 10 people in their 50s and above saying they would have liked to have more children than they actually did. What do you suppose are the broader implications of this overall sentiment?
Yes, part of this report was the regret element, you could say, where you had people who were somewhat older saying they wished they'd had more kids. There was also another section of it, another finding that I think it was 1 out of 5 or thereabouts as well, saying of younger people saying they didn't think they would be able to have as many kids as they wanted to. And so you have it sort of coming from both ends. And part of this, well, with the older people regretting not having more kids, there's the aspect of your preferences changing over time. You want one thing at one part of life, one thing at another, and it's hard to make those align if you're always acting according to the desires of that moment. That's the human condition. I don't know how much we can change that. But as well, this is something that one of the officials was quoted as saying in the documentation, in the report. She said that not necessarily more and more, but too many people feel they are unable to have the family that they want. So the family they want was an interesting phrase to me, that they have a specific set of parameters. This is what I want or need in a family, and if I can't have this, then I'm not going to do it. That's understandable. That's a way of thinking. That's the way we approach anything today in modernity. Like, I want this, how do I get it? How do I make it happen? If I can't make it happen, maybe I'll do something else. But it's not the way it's been for most of human history. Most of human history, you weren't getting the family you weren't thinking about what you wanted, you got the family you got, right? It happened apart from your own preferences for the most part. And there's more bad sides than good to that, you could say. But one bad side of changing that, of fixing it, you could say, is that now we have all these population problems, birth rate problems we're talking about all over the world. But expectations have risen. We can focus on that, where before having a lot of kids was always good because you needed them. They were economic assets and you were going to have them anyway, probably. That was the way it was. Now it's more like you consider the costs. Oh, each kid is going to cost me a lot because I want them to do this, that, and the other. I want them to have this level of status in society, or I want them to go abroad. There are many wants, and the more wants you have, the harder those are going to be, not just to satisfy, but to even believe you can satisfy. So you might just have so many wants or perceived requirements, like in a society like South Korea, there are many of those as well. Oh, you have to do this. You have to go to this specific part of Seoul to go to school. It just can feel like, well, why bother? If I can't check all these boxes, I might as well not even try. And I think we're seeing that phenomenon to different degrees in different societies all over the developed world.
Right. And for the sake of comparison, Celio, what can you tell us about the French birth rate and the measures there to deal with it?
France, like South Korea, is also grappling with a sustained decline in birth rate. In 2024, the country recorded just 600,000 births, the lowest since the Second World War. And for the second consecutive year, the number fell below the symbolic 700,000 mark. The fertility rate dropped to 1.62 children per woman. It's now the lowest since 1919. And of course, compared to Korea, it's still a big number, and France still remains one of the most fertile countries in Europe, thanks to long pro-family policies and subsidized childcare, generous parental leave, and that's the sort of thing I was saying, the infrastructures around parenthood that is lacking in Korea. And France developed them quite a while ago to really make parents access services that would help them to raise a family from 1 to 3 or 4 kids. My parents, I'm the fourth and last kids of my family, so even a big family can make it work with all the services around. And French President Emmanuel Macron called for a demographic rearmament, saying that now that the birth rate is declining, there should be more policies to encourage families. One solution, and we have seen it a lot and it really helped in France, is the immigration. France, thanks to a lot of immigration, has a population still growing, even though parents now have less kids. More people come and choose to live in France, which stabilize the decline of population. In fact, net migration now outweighs natural population growth, the increase. So there's more migrants than people being born in France. And it's a shift we see more also in overall Europe. I would say in Germany is quite similar. Germany also has a declining birth rate, but lot of population immigrating. So overall, while France faces its own demographic challenges, they would say more supports in place and immigration policy also make it so that the population decline is not so much unbearable as it could be in Korea.
Right. And Colin, what has been shared about the Lee Jae-myung administration's policy for the population?
Well, Lee Jae-myung has looked to France as well, as a matter of fact. One of the proposals he's put out there is to do with what's been called in English the family coefficient. The idea is that the more members of the family you have, taxable income is divided among those members, and so taxable income per capita falls. And so that, in a sense, you pay less tax. The more kids you have, you can pay less tax because you had more kids. That, in addition to, much has been said about the payments the government gives in Korea to families who have more kids. One of those payments, I think, currently is something on the order of 100,000 won a month, and he wants to bring it up to 200,000. Neither are large amounts of money, let's face it, but better than nothing. And as well, there have been policies he's discussed even before the election, in the run-up to the election. In the campaign, he was talking about raising credit limits for families with more kids, making credit more available, essentially, the larger a family you have. But, you know, and I see it on other countries' social media as well. This point often gets made. When you think of the cost, or the way people think of the cost of having a child, it's not just the cost to raise them, but the opportunity cost of not working or working less, and then all the money that money could make. The money you didn't earn could itself make money invested. So you take that all together, that's a much larger number than any government has been paying. So people say, like, maybe the payments can work, maybe payments can reverse a falling birth rate, but it probably has to be a lot more than any government is considering or would consider. So look elsewhere as well for solutions, I would say. That's my advice to the Lee Jae-myung government.
Right. We still have a few minutes left, and we've covered all our base today. And that being said, Celio, I'd like to touch upon something you covered recently. I understand you wrote a piece on the use of medication here in South Korea for weight loss. Could you tell us a bit about your coverage?
Indeed, now since October 2024, it's now possible to get a prescription in Korea for the Wegovy. It's a Danish weight loss drug that has been used in the US also before, and maybe people are familiar with the Ozempic. It's basically the same thing. It's a drug made basically for people suffering from diabetes or obesity, but nowadays people use it because they want to lose some weight, even if they're not considered obese or suffering from diabetes. And the trend has been growing and growing in Korea, and since it was available on the market, the Wegovy was sold to almost $250 million. It's not even a year, so it's really growing and growing, and there's some question about whether it is a good trend, because we know Korea is really obsessed with beauty, and being thin here is really important. And people were saying that, especially doctors were saying, there might be some abuse, and that would have some consequences on the health of the client, the customers, because the drug is not made for people with a normal weight or just a little bit overweight. It's made for people in a clear medical condition that should be treated by a doctor, maybe at a hospital. It should not be used just to lose a little bit of weight because we don't feel comfortable with it. That's the main issue. And doctors here, there's a whole group chat on Kakao Talk to exchange addresses of doctors that would be willing to give the medication without really looking at what they're doing. So it's a big problem. It's a big market that is currently now difficult to regulate because it's not refunded by the Social Security. So there's not really control about how it is. And it sells for a lot of money. It's around 400,000 won for 1 month's worth of medication. So it's a big market. For now, still uncontrolled, not really looked on by the government. And doctors are raising the problem that if young people, maybe teenagers or people in their 20s, that feel uncomfortable with their body and with their weight, would get into that. We don't know what could be the consequences on health. There's no major second effect, but maybe it could have some effect on the mental stability of young people that would be too obsessed with their weight and getting into medication that is not normally made for them.
Right. Colin, there are some pundits who claim that, and they're claiming this, we're not saying that it's a fact, that Korea or people in Korea may be a bit too obsessed with physical appearances. What are your observations?
It's a common topic for foreign writers, foreign observers in Korea. I myself have written about the plastic surgery culture here, trying to cast a skeptical eye on it, you might say. But some have told me this is a bit of a legacy in a way of the phenomenon of, or the tradition of gwansang, or the physiognomy, face reading. People, of course, publicly will say that's all superstition. I don't believe in it. But will also adjust their own, pay money to adjust their own features in ways that might be read by others in a more favorable way. Not that they're doing, physiognomy intense, but it's just like, oh, this person seems more trustworthy. This is somebody I can hire because they have these certain features. There are stories that come out from Korea in the Western press about daughters being promised if they get into a good college, we're going to buy you plastic surgery. These are 18-year-old kids. This is the kind of thing that can surprise, to say the least, foreign readers. And I often say, when I first was staying in Korea, first visiting, I woke up in the morning, went out to get a coffee, and I passed up the first 4 coffee shops I saw because they were all inside plastic surgery clinics. I was staying in Apgujeong, so to be fair, that's where you would expect that. But I do notice as well, for all the plastic surgery, standards of dress have fallen markedly. Since I've been living here, for young people, their self-presentation is not quite as neat as it used to be. They're not quite as well put together. They seem messier. They seem more American, let's face it. So in some ways, Korea is starting to feel a little more like the country that I left. But the focus on appearance, it's oftentimes very trend-driven. So when I talk about plastic surgery or talk about anything to do with the way you present yourself in Korea, it's usually about conforming to some kind of trend or another. A certain type of eye might be popular one year, but not the next. And like many foreigners, I can't tell the difference between the eye surgeries, whether someone has it or not. So in a way, I'm not the true expert, but those have been my observations so far.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing them. I'm afraid that's all the time also. Colin, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
And Celio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. Right, that ends this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and do join us again same time next Monday for more panel sessions with our foreign correspondents.